this video, I'm going to talk about rhythm, bluegrass rhythm, that is. In the last maybe 30, 40 years that I can remember, everybody wants to play lead. Nobody wants to play rhythm, and I don't know why. I guess it's not something that you generally hear out front, but the band certainly feels it. And if you've ever listened to the Del McCoury band without Del McCoury, you know Del has a incredible role to play in that band. He really drives it with his rhythm playing, even though he's not out front. In fact, after one year at the Grass Valley, at the Father's Day Bluegrass Festival back in the 90s, he gave a guitar workshop, and he couldn't understand why they had asked him to give a workshop since he, quote, didn't play lead. And he has no idea what he does, but what he does is pretty awesome. So here I'm going to talk about rhythm. I think there are generally three kind of players out there. There's the person with just inhuman kind of chops, who really doesn't play rhythm. They're a hired gun in a band. They stand there at like wallpaper. They're not really interacting rhythmically with the band. They're playing rhythm, but they're not driving the band. And they wait for their turn to get up to the microphone and basically shred. And then when they're done shredding, they go back to being wallpaper. The second kind of player is the person who basically sings and plays good rhythm, or plays rhythm. And so, mentors there that I can think of are, of course, Lester Flatt, and the great Jimmy Martin. Can't forget him. So, of course, you can name a whole host of others, but those are the two big ones that come to mind. And then the third kind of player is the player who not only plays good lead or shreds the lead, but plays really good rhythm and sings. So Larry Sparks, of course, comes to mind, and Tony Rice. Tony Rice is that third player. People didn't give him. Everybody wanted to play like Tony back in the day, and they still do. But they forget that Tony had a pretty awesome rhythm lick. And if you listen to all the bluegrass album bands, those albums, Tony's driving the crap out of that rhythm. He's really driving that band. And so when I first listened, I remember when those albums came out, I was more influenced by Tony's rhythm more than anything, more than his lead playing. Although I went through my own Tony Rice phase. When the Church Street Blues album came out, I was just enthralled by that. And you can't forget, of course, on that album playing rhythm is Wyatt Rice. Wyatt is, in his own right, just one of the best rhythm players out there. So what makes good rhythm? Well, first of all, to understand the job of you as a guitar player in a band playing rhythm, you're not wallpaper. You're there. You're in a supportive and an interactive mode. You're interacting with who's ever playing lead, or who's ever singing, and you're trying to make that sound better, if at all possible. And so, just part of this is just a mindset. How do I play good rhythm? Well, I want to be a supportive player. I want to listen. And in order to support also what's going on, you have to lock. You have to know what groove is. You have to know what good timing is. And a good thing to do, if you've never done it, is to sit at home with a metronome, and that develops inside you a good internal clock. And if you have a good internal clock, when you're playing with other people, you got your ears on, you're listening, and you're trying to lock with what's going on out there. You're not necessarily trying to impose your own view of where the rhythm is, where the groove is. As someone told me, made a lot of sense. Groove is when you're all in agreement. And so if somebody is moving one way, you all should move that way. timing and groove to me shouldn't be like railroad tracks where you're playing to a metronome or a click track. I can always tell when something's been recorded to a click track because it just doesn't sound as alive. It's not breathing. To me, groove and rhythm is more analogous to a road with guardrails. You can move a little bit inside that road, but they're guardrails. You don't want to fall off the cliff and into the ditch, for example. But when people are dancing and moving that way, there's groove, and it's the most awesome feeling when you're playing with people with good groove. So you yourself should develop a good sense of time and groove that people want to lock to you. Okay, and then I would say also learn to sing. Get out there and. Even if you don't think you're a good singer, I'm not a good singer, but I still do it. And because when you're singing, you learn to play rhythm to yourself. You learn to accompany yourself. And if you can accompany yourself, you can accompany other players. Okay, so I'm going to talk about the rhythm lick that I developed through the years. I was listening to one of these YouTube videos of Chris Sharp talking about Lester Flatt and his rhythm, and he does it, of course, with a thumb pick and a finger pick, but it's essentially the same rhythm lick that I've been using for a long time. I'm not sure where it came from. It's probably because I've been listening to Lester Flatt and Jimmy Martin and Mac Wiseman, Larry Sparks, all these guys, Red Smiley, for a long time. And generally, too, that's another point, is you generally play what you listen to. So if you're listening to rock and roll and stuff like that, you're not going to learn bluegrass. If you want to learn bluegrass, you've really got to listen to it. And I suggest digging out all the older stuff. So the rhythm, when you're taught in books, this stuff isn't taught in books, by the way, and but developing a good sense of rhythm and a lick, it does take time. But keep at it. What helps, a good thing to do is like take the bluegrass album bands or take an old recording by Jimmy Martin, Lester Flatt, whoever it is, and you just play it loud at home and become a member of that band. Essentially, play rhythm to it as if you're in that band. Of course, you're responding to what's going on, but they're not responding to you. Okay, that's the only difference when you're playing live, is they're responding, people around you are responding to what you do as well as you're responding to what they do. So here's a lick that you're taught in books, and it's basically a boom chuck. So you can do a boom chuck, which is just a boom where there's no upstroke on the way up. Or if you want to add the upstroke. And that's not bad, but the problem with that is if you're just doing that all the time, you're not really interacting with anything. You're just creating a wall of sound. And if you have 5 guitar players all in a jam, all doing the same thing, no one's going to be heard. So the rhythm lick, so you want to be able to vary what it is you're doing in volume. What I'll often do if someone's singing is I'll leave out those drums and just play. And maybe swell. Okay, so here's the rhythm lick that I use these days. It's not necessarily a boom chucka. It sounds like this. Of course, runs are a big part of it, and there's a whole series of videos that I did on runs, so be sure to watch those. But let me just talk about what I'm doing as far as my strums go. I'm not doing a straight boom chucka like this. So I'll tend to do is a boom chucka, boom, and then kind of a little shuffle at the end, I call it. Now, you don't have to make it as loud as I'm making it. You know, you could. I tend to put more emphasis on that note, so I'll tend to do this. And it depends on what's going on. If there's a banjo player playing, I might kind of change things up. I put accents if he's doing a slide. I might do a long, you know, down the road. So he'll do that. I'll go. Okay, so that's the strum that I use. You don't have to necessarily copy me. It's just, you know, each one of us has to develop our own sense of what a good rhythm lick is. What I'll sometimes do is I'll cross pick that last thing. Instead of doing a little shuffle, I'll go. And I might use that as a swell. Tonight I'm alone without you, my dear. Seems there's a longing for you still. So a big part of rhythm is learning how to go up and down in volume and learning how to swell, they call it. So take that song right there, A Little Cabin Home on the Hill. When I was singing, I wasn't playing a lot of strums. I wasn't playing a straight. If I did, it would sound like this. Tonight I'm alone without you, my dear. It seems, and you know, that's just not alive. So when you're singing or when you're trying to support someone else's singing, be mindful of your volume. I think a lot of guitar players, when they're playing rhythm, at least in the jams, all the jams that I've been in, they're trying to hear themselves instead of trying to hear what's going on. And if everyone's trying to hear themselves, then everyone's just trying to get louder, and the jam can only go one way, loud. And whereas if you're jamming and you're trying to listen to what's actually happening and trying to support that sound, you know, then everything can come down in volume. And also with multiple guitar players playing, you know, the ones that are really have their ears on, you know, we'll look at each other, and we will each share that space. You know, we're not doing G runs at the same time. You know, we're not swelling at the same time. We're kind of trading back and forth our role in that band or in that jam, and that's always fun. So let's take that song. What I was doing when you sing, like I said, you quiet down, but you still give a reference for timing. You know, tonight I'm alone without you, my dear. So I swelled up a little bit there. It seems there's a longing for you still. So I might put a run there as a swell. All I have to do now is sit alone and cry in our little cabin home on the hill. And then the chorus comes. And what I like to do during a chorus is barely play at all. I want to hear voices. I want to hear vocals. And then you're leaving space also for backup instruments to happen. If there's a fiddle player, he's playing long notes behind that. So the chorus, for someone has taken you from me, swell, and left me here all alone. Just listen to the rain beat on my window pane in our little cabin home on the hill. A nice big G run at the end to close it off. And then someone's going to take a break. So let's suppose it's a fiddle. So I'm going to imagine in my head a fiddle player, and I'm going to try to play rhythm. Oh, cabin home on the hill. So that's what I would do. And since there's no actual fiddle player there, again, rhythm is an interactive sport. You've got to do it behind something. But anyway, I would encourage everybody to start listening to what the rhythm that players are actually doing. Listen to Jimmy Martin, Larry Sparks, Del McCoury, of course. What does he do? What does he do that really drives that band? He has no idea. Most of us don't, but I'll tell you what, that band is totally different without Del McCoury in it. That he's putting in those big, beefy runs. Again, play those runs with really good rest strokes and make them firm, make them loud, make them grab you. That's what you want, those runs. It's like, it's a punctuation at the end of a sentence. Speaking of runs too, I would say, you don't necessarily have to put a G run in every single space, be a little bit sparse with it. Listen to Del. He doesn't do that. He's kind of sparse with a G run, but they're in the right spot, exactly what you want to hear at the right time. So that's just developing a good sense of taste over time. Anyway, I'm going to close this out, and I hope that was helpful. Again, listen to check out the videos. I talk about each key and what I would do out of each chord shape and the runs that I would use. So be sure to catch that. Okay, hope that was helpful. Bye.